Hey everyone, so this is a video to show you how to install RedwoodJS. So first thing I'm going to start is explaining that you need to install Node.js as your kind of runtime environment, and then yarn install. The way you would do that is just simply come to their website, nodejs.org, download this, it'll install an installer for Windows, and to check your installation, you just type in node.version. Your node version should match up to the requirements for RedwoodJS in between 14 to 16 here. And then you would just do npm install global yarn like this. I'm not going to do this again. I've already done it. Yep. So we're above the required level here, so that's good. Now I'm going to begin installing RedwoodJS on Windows here. So simply the way you do it is you're going to use yarn create React app. You call Redwood. It's going to get the packages from online, and then we can name our project anything we want after the slash. So we're just going to do test project. And now RedwoodJS, the app, we're fetching the libraries, and it'll begin installing. You'll get some of these warnings, which is all right. It'll work correctly. Okay, now that we have RedwoodJS installed, we can cd into the project. So the way Redwood works is that you have workspaces. So if I list out my directory, I have web and API and scripts. Redwood consider these workspaces. So to be more specific, you want to cd into web. And if I want to install like express.js, yarn add express.js, it will only add that library inside of that directory. So, for example, let's say I want socket.io in my backends. We do yarn add. Oh, we need to back out. Here we go. Yarn add socket.io. So this is just really one of Redwood's conventions, and when you kind of see this orangey Redwood color here, that's kind of installing the package specifically in the workspace of the API, not the front end web. So that's the core difference there. So now we're going back out, and before we start the app, you want to yarn install. So anytime I add a new package to these workspaces, you need to yarn install, and then you can yarn rw dev to start the app. So it generated some files based off the schema, and then the backend app is just going through its loading. It showed up on my other screen here, but I'll drag it over. So yeah, this is Redwood. It begins with some docs, some tutorial stuff, and you can go right into the project like this. Go into web, scroll, and then right here is where it distributes the routes and Redwood Apollo. And then we have pages, layout, components. And the way you start Redwood is that you need to make another window here, another terminal. in the same directory. Go to your project, and then this is yarn redwood generate page, my page, but we can do home slash here, and then it will take the home directory without any other URLs on it. Okay, perfect. So it just generated, it follows a schema, kind of a pattern of auto-generating stories, test, and the JavaScript for that does not begin here. I used the wrong slash. It's /. There we go. And then here we have our automatic homepage, and just like React, we'll be able to edit our homepage. We go to our homepage, homepage.js. So if I bring up my live server, I'm able to easily, just like React, it's using React, but it auto updates like that. So and that's it. So that's how you install RedwoodJS. This doesn't go into a lot of the CLI, so I'm going to explain some of the logic behind RedwoodJS now. So this is the lecture portion after I just installed RedwoodJS. You figured out how to install it probably already, but I want to explain some of its logic. So like I said before, RedwoodJS, its folder structure breaks apart into 3 folders, and there's more hierarchy included in this, but I've cut some of that out. So we have the front end on the left here, and then we have the back end. And basically, when I edit the front end, I'm able to have fetch callouts that affect the back end. So Redwood's idea is that we want composable components, or what they call cells, that organizes the fetch logic. So when I fetch data from the back end, or I pull data to the front end with the put, or what's the word I'm looking for? Get request to get requests. I get my data and bring it to the front end. What's happening is we're using a GraphQL query to affect the SDL in the back. And what happens is that automatically the SDL contacts the JavaScript services folder under API, and then uses the schema Prisma schema under DB for database, so it can, query the data out of the rows and columns that you set in the model, get that into services, load a payload up, and then send that to the front end. So just right from their docs, this explains this logic I just mentioned, is that we have a browser, the front end, a cell, and usually everything's in components, but this component cell uses GraphQL to send the payload to the back end, and the back end is able to query the services to do any kind of calculations. They call these Lambda functions because they have this whole idea of Jamstack and serviceless hardware, but to me, it still deploys on a server somewhere, so, you can call it what you want, but we're still basically sending a query to a database and getting the data back out and then sending it to a front end. We just kind of have this middle portion that makes coding and organizing that code a lot easier, and there's a lot of logic and rules that kind of fit, so we're just not everywhere, and you don't have to maintain your own standards. So the power of RedwoodJS is that here I would define a model in my schema. So if I go back, the schema I talked about is in this DB folder. I would have an ID, an email, a name, and I can have, bytes or longer strings, paragraphs, things like that. You can have relationships between one schema to another, many to many, one to many, and so on. So it's all there. So you define a schema like this, and then you're able my PowerPoint broke. It's okay. you would use a yarn RWG scaffold. What this means is that Redwood is generating a scaffold off the schema that I have. And then it will generate the pages, the layout, the components, the cells, the SDL services. And, here, why you're doing this is to save yourself time, because if you don't use a generator, you have to code the front end page, you have to code the layout for that, you have to code the components and the cells that would fit on that page, the fetch logic, and then you need to prepare the back end to receive that IP address. There's a lot of work that goes into just setting up data flow from the front end to the back end through all your inputs, validation code, error messages. So there's a lot of little components in Redwood that you use to complete your job faster and getting a website up or a prototype up. So you're basically saving a lot of time, and it's just kind of a form of automation to do a lot of repetitive coding you would do otherwise, because you just want to get to the good stuff. You want to make your app work, you want to build that feature, your UX UI kind of experience for your user. So this is the last takeaway, is that Redwood is a philosophy or a opinionated convention. And what I mean by that is that files, services are always plural, SCL files are always plural, so backend files are always plural. Pages from the front end can be plural or singular. If I have one page, right, that's singular, but if I have many articles in a page, that's plural. So it's just kind of like human logic of how we kind of talk. That's kind of used to structure the convention. In the docs, this is similar to Ruby or Rails. But now we kind of have this full stack JavaScript framework. Redwood is all about context. So whatever your documentation ends up to be, whatever your logic ends up to be, you should name your files correctly. You should structure them in the appropriate places. So scalability is not an issue. When I hack a backend up with Flask or Python and I just code a solution right away, I'm breaking a lot of conventions for other programmers, so there's not that scalability. Good tech scales when your whole team can understand how your software is designed and you can make improvements on quickly week to week. So your team having a shared understanding of what things are named and how things are worked and how data gets from the front end to the back end without them guessing week to week, or arguing over this and why is it named like this, you're wasting time. So this is why it's really good to use Redwood, is that you get a solid foundation for your architecture. It's really, Jamstack is an architecture pattern, and this is kind of what Redwood is kind of following, is this convention, is kind of the idea. You're following a set of rules to kind of deliver on a set of promises for your user. So this is just my opinion. Been throwing a lot of opinions, is that, a reorientation of thinking cannot be accomplished without reorientation of process. I need to remember where I got that from. Might record this bit again. But because you've done things a certain way, you can't really change, you can't improve unless you change your way of thinking. Redwood is just asking you to change how you code, your way of coding, into a more structured way. That's it. And you can change it, you don't have to follow hard rules, but it helps with scalability, with engineering, with other people who code with you. That's it. So thanks for watching.